Morning. We're here for another show of Civil Discourse Now, a show in which we have a civil discussion of issues. Mark, you want to say a little bit more about the show?
Sure, because you kind of didn't do what I normally do for the intro. It's always like, welcome to Civil Discourse Now. This is a show where normally we discuss issues international, national, state, and local. We're in Indiana. See, I listen to what you say.
You flip the order of.
Yeah, just a little bit. Right. Usually we talk about political and social issues. Today is a special edition of Civil Discourse Now. We're going to talk about my book, a novel that I wrote, Crime Pays. Mm-hmm. It's available, and you know, I'm not putting us on the level of the Chris Matthews show, but you know, hardball. But you know, he got to prep and promo his book, and so it's like, oh well, you know, I'm promoting, and it's a good book, Crime Pays. It's a novel. It's available at Big Hat Books in Indianapolis. It's on the north side in Broad Ripple. It's at 6510 Cornell Avenue. It's also available on Amazon.com, but you should buy it from Liz at Big Hat Books. But she's a local business. But if you're in some other state or a long ways away, it's on Amazon.com.
Okay, Mark. First of all, give a general background what this book is about.
This book is a fictionalized account of a Ponzi scheme that occurred in mid-north Indiana. Roughly, the roots of it were in about 1962 or 1963. It sort of blew into the newspapers and got headlines in around 66 and 67, and then was wrapped up in 1971.
Is this something you followed growing up?
I was very much following it when I was growing up. This involved a consortium, a group of business people, and the principals were three lawyers in Kokomo, Indiana, who had...
So this book is fictionalized, but it's based on a real...
It's based on... I used the real situation as a takeoff for some of the outrageous things that I depict in the book. Okay. It's a fictionalized account. But at the time, my understanding of the law is that there was a gap in securities law in the United States where intrastate securities were not... Intrastate securities.
Within the state.
Yes, were not subject to federal control or regulation. And at least that's the premise that I use in the book. In reality, these guys started an investment group, and they were buying real estate. They bought interests in natural gas wells in Texas. They purchased horse races, or racehorses, and the way my father got involved in it was they started a construction business, and the construction business was a general contractor. My father at the time was a plumbing and heating contractor, and so he'd get business from them. Over the course of doing business with them, they fell behind in payments to him on contracts, and so he became involved in investing in what they did.
Before we get into some of the details of the book, let me ask you, is this the first book you've written?
No. Okay, that's the second book I've had published. I've probably written about 10 novels. I've had about a dozen short stories published. This is the second book I've had published, but the publishing world has changed. I started my own publishing company, and this is published under Max the Cat Publishing. Max was a very dear cat. Mm-hmm. He passed away. But this is a pod-published book, print on demand. And that means, because a bookstore anymore is a consignment shop. Mm-hmm. Those books there are not yet paid for. I mean, the store puts them on the shelves. The publisher provides those books. The writer doesn't get paid until the books have actually been sold and the checks have gone through the bookstore and then back to the publisher, and then the royalties are very, very small that go to the writers. It's very difficult to get published because of the risk involved. And you think about a consignment, the publisher has to risk printing up all these books to put out on all these shelves all over the place. And if the book doesn't sell, if it's not very popular, they've lost a lot of money that they're going to have to eat in terms of just the costs of printing a whole bunch of books. So it's very difficult for a person to get published if the person hasn't been published before. And so that's kind of that's sort of a catch-22. You can't be published if you haven't been published before, but you can't be published if and so it's a vicious circle. So Crime Pays is the first book that I published by Max the Cat Publishing.
Okay. Have you noticed that the publishing world is changing now? People can download books on Kindles. They don't need to put out the money to print books physically.
Well, on that, first of all, I don't think anybody can ever replace the experience of taking an apple, going out and sitting under a tree and reading a book. I don't think it's the same thing with a Kindle.
So that's what Isaac Newton was doing when the apple fell on his head.
Really?
I think so.
Oh, I thought he was maybe like doing a jigsaw puzzle or something.
He might have been.
It's changed radically. We were talking to a couple of people yesterday at a commencement party, and one of them mentioned that her daughter graduated from DePaul University and had wanted to write and is now in publishing, and just how difficult it is right now because everything has changed in publishing. You don't need to have a big publisher to publish your book. You contact, and you have to be real careful about this too, because my first book that was published, I really felt that I got kind of schnookered on that. I went to a publisher that essentially did what I did, only charged me a whole bunch of extra money to do it. I went to Lightning Source, that's Amazon.com's POD arm. They do the publishing. And you can go to like Author House or other places, but I went to them. I got my own international serialized book number, and that's important. It's an international serialized book number, appears right here. And that's how they're able to sell your book. They can do it online. You get a barcode, you have to pay for the barcode, but you don't want to have like Lightning Source do all that stuff for you. They'll do it. It's a one-stop shop. Because if you provide your own ISBN, it's less expensive for you, but also when reviewers look at books, they look at the ISBN, and if it's a prefix on there for something like Lightning Source or what they consider to be a vanity press, then they won't do a review of it. So that's why I started my own company, got an ISBN, got the barcode, but years ago, you'd have to go to a printing press. Somebody would have this huge machinery. It'd be a lot more expensive to do that. We provide and I'm coming out with a new book in January called $1 Billion Balls. And all you do is submit the edited, computer formatted book, and they input it into their machine, and then people order it online, or the bookstore orders copies online. You pay like under $1,000, I think it was, for the setup, and then the price of every book, I believe this is like $16.99. You determine what the price of the book's going to be, and they keep like 7 or 8 books of the cover price. You get the rest. If you were going through a regular publisher, your royalties would be about 50 cents a copy.
Interesting. Well, let's talk a little bit about the writing process before we actually get into the book. I'm curious, you're a full-time attorney, correct?
Yes.
And you do writing, you're mostly an appellate attorney?
80% of my practice consists of appellate and post-conviction work.
And I assume you spend a lot of time doing that, correct?
Yes.
How do you find the time, and when do you find the time to write a novel?
First thing I get up in the morning, I play 3 hands. First thing I get up in the morning.
At what time, approximately?
4:30.
4:30. Okay.
I feed the cats. Then I go into the computer. I play 3 hands of solitaire on the computer. It's just this thing I do to get my brain moving. Unless I win on the first or second hand. Then I start writing. If I have something in progress, I just finished the second draft of a novel. I work on it for about an hour, and then I do things on the website, online, check things, do some research, but that's when I do it.
Okay. And normally during a session, do you write every day?
Yes.
Do you write a page, 2 pages?
When I got, I was a political science major at DePaul University, and I decided to write my last year of school. That's a really good idea to decide what should really change my major. The guy that I talked to about writing is Darryl Lindquist. He's a screenwriter, a songwriter, and he said that he had a certain thing that he did, and what I did was kind of bastardize that. I set for myself a minimum of 5 pages a day to write and 50 pages a day to read. It didn't matter what of anything. So it's 5 pages minimum.
If someone wants to become a writer, do you suggest they read a lot? Does that help, or what kind of background?
I don't think that there's any single background. I think it's anything, but one thing you've got to do is write. And I think Henry Miller said, if you want to write, realize you've got to write at least 5,000 words a day, and that 90% of it's going to be crap. That's if you're lucky. And early drafts for me are really bad.
Right.
I have bad first drafts.
Well, speaking of that, do you have people proof it? Other people read it, give you input?
Only at the end.
Only at the end?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about the novel. First of all, I'm curious.
And this is an 8th or 9th draft.
8th or 9th draft.
Yes.
Interesting. The title is Crime Pays. I was interested in did you have someone lay this out? Did someone decide or bring in a graphics person? I'm interested, do you have a black background, obviously?
What I wanted to do was make it as simple as possible so that it would attract attention. First. Second, I talked with the person. When I got out of law school, I hung out my shingle, and a guy named John, he's at the Village Press, John Hunt. I talked to him about doing this. John laid this out, and we communicated about how we wanted to do it. And I wanted to have something that looked like it was from a typewriter, and I also wanted a $sign with an exclamation mark in it. And other than that, I wanted everything pretty simple. And John did a wonderful job on this.
Okay, and the $sign is actually in green.
Yeah, I wanted it in green.
Okay. Let me ask about your name. Lowercase with a period at the end?
Yeah, that's how I've always used that's how my name has always appeared in print on short stories and books. Because I just kind of don't, after having studied Zen and Buddhism in college and various reasons, I don't take egos seriously all that much. But at the same time, I wanted that to be a complete sentence. And so Mark Small is an imperative sentence. Mark Small. So that's just the way.
Interesting. And you have a quote on the back of the book, correct?
Yes, I do.
Author Mark Small has penned a tale eerily relevant to the economic turmoil that burdens Americans today as a result of the greed and financial misdealings of big business and Wall Street. His initially tangled storylines effortlessly unravel to reveal an emphatic reminder that nothing is free in life, and to think otherwise is simply absurd. What a great quote, Mark.
Yeah, it is. It is a great quote. I don't know who wrote that.
It must have been someone just fascinated by your book.
I could check it out and look through the files, but I see our first segment is at an end.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And our first segment's at an end, and we'll come back and talk to Mark Small more about his novel Crime Pays.
Be right back.
And